Hello, my name's Peter Wooding, and thank you for joining us. Today's session is part of our Automotive Outbound series, episode number 4, Ports and Terminals Preparing for the Future. We've a great panelists on the session, and Dennis, who you've seen before, will obviously be moderating. So I'll hand over to you, Dennis, to introduce everyone. I'll be stuck at the bottom of the screen here, so you'll see me if you need it. Many thanks, everybody, and here's to a great outbound session. Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Peter, for inviting me to host our panel today. Frankly, this is one of my favorite subjects. I love to talk about ports and terminals, and for me, as a former OEM person, I mean, this is one of the most important parts of our business, we rely on so many different aspects and partners within this industry to make the ports and terminals run successfully. So, and then I'm fortunate today to have 4 good friends who've generously volunteered their time to provide some of their expertise, and so I want to thank our panel today for joining us. So the title of our session today is Ports and Terminals and Preparing for the Future. So we have a number of questions for everybody today, and we're going to kind of generate the questions and the answers around that overall theme. But we can take this any direction we feel. So very exciting. So let me welcome my panel, and then I'm going to ask each one of you to kind of introduce yourselves and just give a 30-second overview of your roles and responsibilities within your organization. And I'm going to start with one of my favorite golfing buddies, which is John Felitto.
Thank you, Dennis, and hello, everyone. It's good to be here and be live, and it would be great if we were all in person, but soon enough. I look forward to everyone and seeing everyone then. So I'm with Wallenius Wilhelmsen Solutions, and I have the responsibility of running our logistics business in North America for automobiles. So the auto processing business, as well as the logistics business, and we manage the port processing. We manage vehicle logistics from factories to dealers, from ports to dealers, and of course from ports loading onto vessels. Our operation is about 32 facilities in North America, US, Canada, and Mexico, at both plants and ports.
Great, thanks, John. So I'll just move across the bottom of the screen. Anu, if you'll introduce yourself and kind of share what your responsibilities are.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on obviously on where you are. My name's Anu Goel, as Dennis mentioned. I'm with the Volkswagen Group of America. Me and my team are responsible for what we call Group After Sales and Services. And in simple terms, the brands are national sales companies, and we are a conglomeration of 7 different functions that are better done centrally than they are by each brand, of which vehicle logistics, as John had mentioned, right, one of our partners, cars from factories through our ports, accessories, et cetera, to dealers is one of the 7 functions. Service parts operations is another function. Service workshop technology, customer relationship management, business development are other types of functions. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of things, but those things that are better done together for our VW and Audi partners.
Right. Thanks, Anu. Rory from Mercedes.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm a small player compared to all these guys sitting here. I'm with Mercedes-Benz USA, and MBUSA is the sole distributor of passenger cars in the United States. But we made a decision about a year ago. We have one plant in the United States, which is MBUSI, which produces all of our SUVs. And SUVs for us is become a predominant product for us throughout the entire world. And what we discovered was that we needed to focus more on making sure our logistic operation for the supply chain was being handled more efficiently from an operational standpoint and cost standpoint. So my responsibility is to manage the entire operation from a finished vehicle standpoint, the logistic movements from the plant, from the time the vehicles are finally okayed until they're on the international waters or they're with our dealers. So I have responsibility for all the transportation and dealing with the port processors at the various ports where we export our vehicles, plus the domestic SUV product.
Right. Thanks, Rory. And Don?
Okay, thank you, Dennis. I'm Don Asdell. I'm the president and CEO of International Auto Processing, headquartered in Brunswick, Georgia, and we provide auto processing services for new vehicles and high and heavy equipment.
Great. And talking to Peter Wooding earlier, our session has a large following with people signing in today. We have one of the largest registration rates of all the sessions they've ever done. And so it can't be because of the moderator, it has to be because of the panel, I assume. John's laughing at me, but anyway.
You're too kind, Dennis.
On a serious note, we do have a record number of people registering, attending today's session. So congratulations to our panel. And a small shout out, my son is now in the distribution industry, automotive, working for one of the key OEMs, and he's actually joining us today. So hello to my son. So anyway, I'm going to start off with John. So John, so what are some of the main constraints we're facing with the auto business at some of these port locations that you see? Because you're at a lot of different facilities.
We are. I mean, of course, our biggest constraint, especially in the last couple of years, has been the space to grow. And I think that there are some ports that are well positioned for growth, and they have a lot of adjacent land, and they welcome the auto business, and it's a core business to them. So for us, it's always been about being able to grow in those ports that our customers really want to come to, right? These hub ports. And of course, the big challenge is you can't, there's not always land where everyone wants to go in the big hub ports. So for us, it's having that right mix of space to grow, availability, and having a partner there that's willing to work with us in the Port Authority over a long period of time. We invest in our vessels for a long period of time. We invest in our port operations, our processing operations, 20 plus years when we make sizable investments. So we need a partner who's a business partner with us, not just a real estate partner, and that can give us the vision and the ability to grow as our business grows. The last thing we want to do is go to any of our customers and say, we don't have space to accommodate you. We always try to find a way, but there are certain ports in North America that we operate at today where there's just no space to grow in.
Gotcha. I knew you guys are a larger brand, and so the OEM and the port operators, there has to be great synergy, great connection. Any comments or thoughts in regards to that from your operating standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think John raised some very good points when he spoke, right? The terminology, he used the terminology real estate partner. The terminology we use very similar is this a transaction-based relationship, right? Do we have space? Are we performing properly, and are we paying for all the line items that we contracted for? To me, that doesn't work. That's not how you do business. As John said, these are not commodities, right? I don't view this business as a commodity. I view it as a relationship. And if you don't have the relationship, it doesn't matter because we're both going to mess up. Things are going to happen upstream, downstream that are going to impact her. Right? Just take the conversation about space. Why do we need more space in an industry that's down 2 million units from pre-pandemic? Is it because cars are backing up? Fleet customers aren't taking cars. Production plants are still running. Cars that customers don't want. I mean, all sorts of things happen. At the end of the day, our relationship with the ports, terminals, the operators will determine our ability to handle everything that'll get thrown at us. Hurricanes, weather, all sorts of stuff. So that's what I look for. Right? I mean, that to me is the secret sauce or the magic in all of this. If I've got a transaction-based deal, I guarantee you I'm going to be looking for somebody else. Or I'm not going to be a priority for the port operator because that's not what they want. And, if I'm sharing a facility with 80 acres and I've contracted, pick a number, 30 acres, and the other manufacturers there are overflowing, do I get a priority if I'm a transaction, right? There'll be a fence put around my part of it, and I'm going to get zero help to do what I need to do unless I'm writing a boatload of checks. Right. So I think John's spot on, if that helps.
Yeah. And Rory, I mean, Mercedes volume is great volume, and your Vance plant that's a huge operation, and so I would imagine with the different vendors you do business with, you're constantly in communication with those different vendors about various kind of issues to try and help with your overall network flow.
Well, I agree with both esteemed gentlemen that went before me. What I find interesting is how people try to turn this into transaction based. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It has to be a relationship. And sometimes in a relationship, we all have to do things that we might not say is necessarily in our own best interest, but it's in the best interest of the relationship. And you have to prove to your port processors, to the ship lines, to the individuals that that are moving our vehicles via train from the plant. You have to be a partner, and you have to understand that just like you, they're in it to provide a service, and they're not doing it as a charity. It is a business. They need to make money, just like you need to make money. And some of the challenges I find, and why they put an emphasis now on it at Daimler is we made some mistakes relative to producing too fast, too quick, and not maintaining the relationship that we needed to with our suppliers. And so then, they said we have to refocus this. We have to focus on the relationship in the entire supply chain, especially at the ports, because our export business now, out of our one and only plant as of right now, is huge for the Daimler enterprise.
Right. I think in the careers that we've all had in this industry, the more successful people are better at assessing their needs and your needs. So if you're an OEM, what's the supplier need? What can I do with, whether it's Mercedes or Volkswagen, whatever brand, what can I do with WWL or what can I help them with to be more successful? Because you're only successful as that linkage between the two, right? And
Absolutely.
The people that are more successful, I think they do a better job of understanding both sides of the fence. It can't be a one-way street, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
You have to listen. You have to listen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So Don,
be careful, Don. Be careful.
But Don, you guys handle a lot of different brands. You're at a great location, a great partner there with the Georgia Port Authority. What kind of issues are you guys facing in this environment?
Yeah, and I'll get to that. Just to touch on briefly on the last conversation, we've been really fortunate to have a great partnership with the Port Authority here, and we've been able to expand our footprint. Just over the last 5 years, we've been able to add right around 150 additional acres, and that enables us to be able to work with our customers to expand their footprint when they have surges in volume, quality holds, or even capacity or constraint issues with the ocean vessels. So it's been great to have that type of flexibility. And like John said, it's always, a challenge to be able to expand your footprint and still be in areas of the port that are favorable for your customers. The farther you get away from the berth, the more cost you add with the, stevedoring and longshoreman costs. So you're trying to minimize that distance from the berth and at the same time expand that footprint. Other than land, one of our biggest challenges has actually been labor. It's really been difficult to be able to hire enough employees. We're short probably 15% of our total headcount every single day. Just really being challenged to find people that want to work and come to work. And we've seen unemployment levels go up significantly because of COVID-19, and you would think that there'd be excess labor available, but that hasn't been the case for us. So that's one of our biggest challenges, is finding different ways to try to recruit, incentivize employees, and encourage them to come to work every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely agreed, Dennis. Just if I could with Don, and that is a huge challenge for all of us. And I know for the OEMs as well at the plants, and for us at the ports and plants, talented labor is in high demand.
Sure.
It's taking longer and longer to recruit and it's getting much, much more expensive to keep the people you have and to find new good labor. It's all of us. We're all facing this right now. We need to figure it out together.
Yeah. So the overall theme of our session is in regard to the EV segment of our business, and even though it's a small percentage of the retail industry at the moment, the forecast from everybody is growth. I did a quick snapshot a couple of weeks back, and I was looking at all the new model launches over the next 30 months. And because I know Volkswagen knew you guys just launched your, is it ID4? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, the ID4.
Which is a way cool vehicle, by the way. But over the next 30 months, there's 98 electric and hybrid electric products being introduced between all the different name brands. And truthfully, 3/4 of them, I couldn't even, tell you the names now. There's so much complexity out there. But John, let me circle back with you. So with the EV and autonomous vehicles, what impacts is this going to have on our business, ports, plants, what have you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that a few years ago, when we started talking about this, there was a lot of talk about autonomy, and the cars will be driving themselves. I think as we mature our understanding of EV and autonomy, we realize there is a level of autonomy, but it's the EV challenge that we have to take on first, right? Electrification is moving, I would say, much faster than what we thought it would for a lot of different reasons. And there are definitely some challenges with that. From a port side, and we have a lot of projects running on it, because even though the preponderance of our cars are still, of course, all of us here are ICE engines, we are handling now EVs in almost every location, every country we operate, across ports, plants, the vessels, processing. So we're learning a lot about it holistically. For me, at the port side, it's right now about infrastructure, right? As we need to be able to charge all of these units. We're going to have to move these units around the yard. And we definitely need the port authorities to understand that their power capability into the ports is going to become a much bigger deal than it has been traditionally. And there's two pieces of that happening at the same time. There's the move to cold ironing of vessels and shutting down your vessels at port. And as you all well know, container vessels demand much less electricity than ro-ro vessels because the fans are always operating to vent them. We need some substantial power at the port for that alone. Then put on top of that dozens of chargers that we have and that everyone is starting to put in. We have for people on the screen, and we've done it, and that's a challenge. So those are kind of the immediate things we're trying to figure out. There's a host of other things, but those are some of the ones that come to mind when I first think about it.
Great. Don, let me jump up with you there. Large facility, a lot of product, a lot of customers. I'm sure you're seeing some changes within your own facility and with the port support.
Yeah, we have. I mean, our big challenge is trying to understand what type of infrastructure to put in at the port. And it has a lot to do with what our customers' requirements are going to be. And they're really simple things in concept, like state of charge. Before the vehicle leaves here, does our customer want it to be 20% state of charge, 50% state of charge? What's the state of charge going to be when it leaves the manufacturing plant? So we're trying to define that. What type of charging equipment do they want? Is there a certain brand? We had one customer that specified Bosch charging stations. So are we going to have different types of charging equipment depending on the manufacturer? So those are some of the challenges that we're really struggling with right now. AIAG, Automotive Industry Action Group, just recently created a committee that has a number of OEMs on it and a number of suppliers. And I'd encourage anybody that's online on the conference to look into that, because I think the more OEMs and the more vendors that we have trying to come together to get consistency across the board will make everyone's life a lot easier. And, one of our concerns is we don't want to invest on the front end and have what we invest in be obsolete or not the right equipment. So right now we're handling it kind of on a one-off exception basis. If we have a customer that comes to us and says, we want you to have this for our electric vehicle, we're trying to focus on that, but we haven't fully committed to what our long-term strategy is.
Right. And I'm going to jump down to Anu in a second, but before I do, just to remind all of our viewers who are signed in today, there is a capability to ask our panelists questions. So if you want to, send us a question, we'll try and go through those and share those with our panelists. So Anu, you're at a lot of different ports, large OEM, a lot of different models. Are you seeing a differentiation in some of the services provided at some of the ports in regards to the EV hybrid thing, or what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, fair point. I mean, John and Don talked about it a little bit, the infrastructure required. It's still evolving. Different OEs, different chargers, different requirements for state of charge, et cetera. So yes, we have basic standards that we need for our business, our products, our vehicles in the ports that the processors have done a very good job of getting in place. I think it's a little bit more or a lot more complex than just the infrastructure argument. I mean, just take basic stuff. ICE vehicle runs out of gas while you're moving it around. What do you do, right? 10, 15 minutes, go get a can of gas, put it in and move the thing out.
Yep.
Do we have mobile chargers? This isn't just the charging stations where we need them to be, but that's going to take longer. I mean, this is not, putting a gallon of gas in the car and getting it moving again. God forbid something happens and damages the battery. That is hazardous. I mean, that is a significant issue that needs to be quarantined and handled, right? So you've got all those complexities that get into it. But if you step back, one I'll throw out there for everyone, just think about that's got me staying up at night a little bit is think about the customers for EV vehicles. All our research and data shows that they are technically extremely savvy, early adopters, right? They want the digital experience from the time they go in to reserve a vehicle, put their money in, and follow it through from production on the vessel, through the port, on the truck, rail car, et cetera, delivery to them. We've talked about ETAs for ICE vehicles for a while, and we, thumb in the air, we do estimates and try to give it to them. These customers want to know where their car is at all times as it's moving through the system. The excitement is there. So just think about this. Why is my car sitting in port A for 9 days? Well, our target's to get it out in 11, right? We spent, it's a day to unload it. It's, 4 to 5 days to process it. It's 2 to 3 days in the load lanes. Then it's a day or two transit to you. What? That car came off the boat. I want it. So the transparency, the expectations to keep these customers loyal to this brand are going to go off the charts because of who these people are, right? And are we set up to do that? Right. So you got to think of the customer experience, not just the handling, processing, infrastructure element of it. The expectations for this group are through the roof. Right. And that's the challenge for all of us.
No. Good commentary. Hey, Rory, everybody's got a smartphone at their disposal. Everybody's big on texting, emailing. We got virtual meetings going on, connecting, in this case, the world. Are we better at staying connected? Are we better at communicating? Are we better at messaging? Whether you're the OEM or you're the supplier, are we doing a better job with this than we did 5-10 years ago?
This is going to sound, I don't know, maybe short-sighted, but I would say we've done a better job in the last 12 to 18 months, and 12 months because of COVID,
Right.
because of the fact that you had to change things on how you're sharing your data, because there's not a lot of in-person things. So I think we're doing better, but I agree with the transparency that you want as an OEM and to watch where your cars are, but what the customer wants is overwhelming. And we get a lot of our directive from our parent company in Germany, and our cars are pretty, they're pretty sophisticated and the ability to track them wherever they are. But then you get to the other questions. Where's the privacy? Why do you want them to know why a car is sitting at a port for 5 days? I don't know. Do you really want that? Because sometimes, I know this might sound terrible, sometimes it's better not to know the reasons. It really is, because it's not going to change anything and it's not going to be productive. So I think we also have to be careful with the transparency and the digitalization that's occurring throughout our industry. Is, do we also have to keep in mind there's certain things from a privacy element that don't provide value and just provide a lot of extra extraneous information that is going to come back and just cause unnecessary issues. And I'll have to be honest with Daimler, our first plant, we don't even have our first, we have hybrids. We're just getting ready for our EQs. And when I think of the infrastructure, within our own company, what type of charging, what equipment we're going to use has changed at least 4 times. So it's really hard. And I'm telling you, I'm waiting for the plants to figure it out, because how can I, from a transportation standpoint, to move these vehicles to the ports or to dealers, know what I need from an infrastructure standpoint? Everything I put in now, I can tell you, the stuff we put in a new domestic yard in Vance, Alabama, it's antiquated. And we haven't even used it.
Wow.
So it's frustrating, because, as you say, it's moving so rapidly. How we, as OEMs and as in the supply chain from a transportation standpoint, are able to keep up and do the right thing. There needs to be more uniformity. I just don't know if us as manufacturers are capable of doing that, but we really do need to do that, because it's going to hurt us from a transportation standpoint.
So when I was in my role with Honda, I worked very hard to stay connected to my supplier base. I talked to John Felitto probably on a weekly basis, maybe, but any supplier on a regular basis, and because I think that's one of the keys to getting ahead of issues, right? Is having that constant flow of communication both ways, good and bad, And you four, by the way, are excellent communicators. I reach out to you, and you're great at connecting, and I think that's one of the key drivers of our industry is these kind of events to share thoughts and commentary, what goes on, but most of the good leaders, which you all are in that category, are wonderful at staying connected with their business. So shifting gears a little bit, Don, COVID. What a curveball, right? The impact it had on your business, tell me this year is going to be better, it's going to be easier.
Yeah, so Dennis, I think, we were fortunate being located in the Southeast, because we really didn't see as big of an impact in the Southeast on vehicle sales as I think we saw in some other areas of the country, even though overall I think everyone will agree that sales were still much stronger than what everybody expected. We had a really bad second quarter in 2020 because of COVID-19. And on the front end of it, we had enough vehicles that were already in transit and had already been built where we had that pipeline full. But where we saw a drop was when the manufacturing plant shut down, and, maybe they were, shipping from Europe. So we had that delay. In addition, we had the 2 weeks of sailing time and the amount of time that the manufacturing plants were shut down. So I'd say in second quarter of last year, we were down about 40% of what we would normally expect for arrivals, but our customers made that up in Q3 and Q4, and we actually were up 2% in 2020 over 2019. And we're seeing, additional growth this year. We're forecasting to have 14% more arrivals in 2021 than what we had last year. So in a strange way, our challenges were more, how do we keep our workforce healthy? How do we prevent COVID-19 outbreaks? And I think we were really successful with that. And fortunately, a lot of what we do is outdoors. Most of our processing shops are open air, so we had good airflow and circulation. And by nature of working on a car, before you had 2 people working on a car, and if you change that and you have 1 person working on a car, the car keeps that distance automatically from the workforce. So we were able to adapt fairly easily, just by nature of our industry.
Well, I kind of talked about this on my last session, but last year in the automotive industry was like a tale of two cities, if you will. Kind of the first half, second half, and we started out of the gate pretty good last year, and then COVID hit, and it's the numbers you quoted, Don, were spot on. Everybody fell, drastically, but then we started to get in some energy into the retail side of the business, not the fleet side, but the retail side. And the second half of the year, Volkswagen, Mercedes, I don't care what the brand was, everybody was selling a ton of cars. So production had been reduced. Now we're selling a lot of cars. We cut through the excess production, and then there's a huge more demand than supply at that point. But when you look at just pure retail, considering what happened with that first half of the year, second half of the year, and then the total year was pretty darn good. And then, actually, we've come out of the gate pretty strong here. Now, the fleet rental stuff is difficult, and that's probably still going to be a challenge, but retail is pretty strong.
Yeah, I think for us, what we're concerned about is, and first I want to say that, back on the COVID situation, for the folks at WW and all of our companies that work on the front line, they had to work through all of this. They didn't have the luxury of working from home, and they did a fantastic job. And we stayed open to some degree through the whole thing. So I just want to thank all of the WW folks and all of your folks who were on the front line together, because that was a tough job. It was a tough job. The conditions are tough as it is, but then to live through this, doing these jobs under the COVID protective gear is even more. So that I just wanted to thank everyone for that. But for us, what I see is, yes, I agree with everything that's said. We had a strong comeback towards the end of the year, but we're finding this collateral damage of COVID keeps creeping around, right, in the supply chain. Microchip shortages, foam shortages, backed up containers on the West Coast with vessels sitting there, and you're waiting every day. Is there going to be something new that hits that's unexpected? And this is causing a very, this bullwhip effect and this herky-jerky startup to the supply chain that, there are so many things happening. It's hard to plan for all of them at any given time. So I think for us, what we ask for is the communication level with the folks on this call, with all of you, with Anu and Rory. It's fantastic. We have to continue that. We need as much vision into this as possible to help us to get through this period.
Good comments, John. So we have a little less than 15 minutes for our session today, but we do have a question from our audience there. They're asking about, new safety measures. Do they need to be in place for the EVs? Is there other strategic things we need to be? Anu, any thoughts on that? Do you guys have new measures in place?
Yeah, we got 15 minutes, get more questions, but yes. That's the short answer. I mean, there is a entire policy manual procedure established for the handling of anything that could happen with EVs. I've been in when we were back traveling, right, pre-COVID, working with the engineers and safety teams and quality teams in Wolfsburg. You walk in, they're wearing orange rubber suits.
Oh, wow.
These are master electricians that are developing processes for handling these things because of the complexity of them, right? And as you go from a single unit module to, what we've got now with the multi-modules, right? 36 in the underbelly of the car, it becomes easier to handle because you can contain where the issue is. But absolutely, there are containers for fire hazard that are the size of the battery that are $15,000 a piece that you need to transport these things. There are different policies for if it's leaking or if it's punctured. So the trick here is training everyone in the handling of these, right? Our teams, the ports, the terminals, the process, everybody, and then our dealers, right? Carriers, right? What if something happens in transit that punctures a battery, something pops up from the underside, right? What happens if it's on a rail car?
Right.
Right. And so, yes, sorry for going on for, 40 seconds here, but it is absolutely top priority. And there are things, and as Rory had said, they're changing. because as things happen, we learn more. I mean, we have not figured out every instance. We've got the luxury of some of these electric vehicles have been launched in Europe before they're here, right? The ID3, the precursor to the ID4. So we're learning as other things happen, but there's different rules and regulations in different countries.
Yeah. So with the production cars, you have the initial charge that each of these are provided, and then and I think it affects the car haulers more than anybody if we have if we reach a low charge on the vehicle and then it actually is a dead vehicle, because a low charge product they can still maneuver, but if it's a dead product, from my understanding, it creates a lot of issues, and I think it's mainly the car hauler who has those challenges. So Don, looking at you on the safety issues, have you guys implemented a lot of what if scenario kind of planning with your staff?
We have. I mean, we've updated our fire handling policy. So, I mean, that's been the bigger focus. But the other concern is not only with our own staff of how we handle it, but it's when you do have an emergency and you call 911 and the fire department shows up at the port, do they know how to handle the emergency? And I don't think, overall that's really been addressed. And it's probably different if you look at, fire department by fire department, but do the emergency personnel that are going to show up, do they know how to react to an electric vehicle that's on fire? So.
Yeah. Rory, anything from a Mercedes standpoint that the conversations you all have had with safety measures?
A lot has to do with, just as Anu said, we're fortunate we launch our electric product in other countries before we bring it to the United States. So for once in our life, I think it's good to be behind the scenes versus being the first ones out, because there's so much to learn. And I have to tell you, it's constantly changing. Right now, I would say we're at a lull. The first for what I'm responsible for, which is out of Vance, Alabama, we're not producing our first EQ for the SUVs this year. The focus is on our sedan that we're bringing into the country. And so a lot of the challenges that we're having and how we're going to set things up are still to be determined. At the transportation level, not at the level that Anu's talking about, from producing it, how they're going to have the cars moved within Europe, but in the United States, we're kind of in the background right now on getting that. We have adopted a few things already, I would say, relative to hybrids that I would assume from checks and things that we're doing with the cars, we will institute with EQs, but we don't have a set standard yet that has been communicated to us or that we're involved with developing.
Gotcha. John, ports and terminals, do you guys see a growth in the space committed on the different ports and terminals? Do you see any new ports and terminals coming online?
Well, I think that Anu brought something up. I think that was earlier on that was spot on, is that, volumes had dropped down, and why are we still talking about needing additional space? And I think that what the challenge is, as much as it is space to grow, because that is still there, and we hope we get back to where we were and keep growing, although EV could change some of that, is the way the supply chain behaves with the peaks and the troughs that we have. And of course, the smoother we could make that, and bringing it full circle to the comment about delivering EV vehicles quickly to the customer and the challenges in that, but the smoother we could make that, those peaks and valleys at the port, of course, then our land requirement is not as great, right? So a smooth pipeline flowing helps us out. That's not the reality of our world that we work in. The better we could get at that, the less demand we have on space. And let's face it, as a processor, Don and I could go and process cars anywhere in the US at any port that someone wants to go to if there's land to open and we make the investment and it makes sense and we have a long-term partner. But vessel operators do not want to have more and more vessel calls on this very expensive asset. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So we have to figure out in great ports like Georgia, where Don is and where we operate, and other great ports around the country, how to make it work at those ports so that the entire network has density and better performance through those gateways for me.
Gotcha. Good comment. Anu, another question from our audience. Is there an underbody check that's now being added since we have batteries, more electric cars? Is there some undercarriage check that's being added to the inspection? Do you know?
Yes. It is. It's what when we call it our PDI, right? Checklist. Absolutely a integral part of that process.
Yeah. Okay. So I had thought about a good question. Okay, Rory. So years and years from now, when you're ready to retire, and your replacement is sitting across from you, what advice are you going to give your replacement that you wish you had known at that point?
You know, it's gonna now. I'm really gonna sound old.
But
I
that's
really don't. Yeah, and I don't appreciate that. All right, I color my hair, so I don't appreciate that. But what I will tell you, no matter what changes,
keep my hair. I'm just
well, if you keep working on that. But what I'm gonna say is, and you know what, it maybe it's old school, but it's relationships. You don't sit there and think you can manage by looking just at the data.
Yeah.
There's human beings behind the data. Just like John said, I mean, all these people that were on the front line and they did not stay at home, where a lot of us had that opportunity to keep this economy and keep this industry going. You know, they're people, they're not data. And you're not going to understand the significance of what we're doing or what value is brought if you don't maintain those relationships.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've been in sales and different things, but I will tell you, this group of people, finished vehicle logistics, port processors, terminals, trucking, they're the most real, genuine, honest, hardworking individuals. And I'm honored to be a part of this team.
Yeah, totally agree.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anu, same question for you. 20 years from now, because you're still a young man, 15, 20 years from now, you're retiring and your replacement's there. And what advice do you give him or her?
I think Rory's spot on with the relationships, and that's what you need to do, right? You got to have the humility, which everyone talks about as a leader. But here's what I would tell someone 20 years down the road. It's easy to get lost and have this viewed as a simple thing to do for people that don't understand what happens. I mean, as John mentioned earlier, we've been coming to work since day one of the pandemic when 80% of our company went home and worked from home for the past 12 months, right? So what I would say is you have to let let's use the words grown-ups know that you're there and get yourself a seat at the table because all the investments, the resources, et cetera, that are required will get lost in the mix and you'll be treading water, right? So you have to be a cheerleader without, blowing your own horn all the time, but you have to help the senior leadership understand the value that this function brings other than just a cost entity for cost cutting when budgets are tasked, right? You got to be a cheerleader for the team.
And the only thing I like to add to that is in our organization, what we discovered is we have to get the supply chain, the finished vehicle, more aligned and more as a cheerleader at the table with the actual manufacturer on how we're set up, because that's the only way, as Anu said, that we're starting to get the attention and the investment dollars towards our area to support the ongoing operation. So I agree 100% with what Anu said.
Yeah, just one more comment if I. Just one more comment if I could. Just bring it to a real world example. Things happen upstream, and the question everybody wants to know for the company for cash flow is, did you meet your wholesale target for the month? That's it. Forget the quality holds, forget the fact that the vessel was delayed, forget the fact that production didn't make the mix that you needed to make, right? Or anything that may have held it up, right? If the wholesale is not met, where's the first finger get looked or pointed, right? You have to help everyone understand this has to work together as a total supply chain, one team, right? Or it does not work.
Yeah. Team, so much value in team. I've always believed in team. Don, a slightly different question for you is knowing what you know now when you started in your role, is there something you wish you had known at that point?
Well, I would say a good general rule is that bad news doesn't get better with time.
Yeah.
So if you have an issue, you have a negative, you have a problem, you want to raise the flag immediately. And that goes back to kind of what Rory was saying with that relationship. If you have a good relationship with your customer, your vendors, and there's going to be an issue, the sooner that everybody knows about that issue, the faster you can come up with the solution to the problem.
Yeah, good comment. John, we're going to finish with you. Same question. You've been in your role a while. What do you wish you had known back then that you've learned up until this point in time?
Well, I just want to start by saying, one of the hard parts about working remotely and or not being able to see everyone in this business is what Rory said. I think it's a fantastic group of people who see each other a lot, and they need to, because we need to be very close in this supply chain to make it work. I would give advice to anyone. I think in any relationship, in any role, in any leadership role in this business, you got to be genuine. You got to be yourself, and you got to build a strong team. And if you build a strong team, you could trust, and that goes across the customers, the people who work in your company, and all the providers out there will be successful together. So build those relationships early. Spend a lot of time on them. That's what counts. It's out in the market. It's with our customers. That's where we need to be all the time. That's where we learn to do our business better.
Good comments. Well, we're out of time, and I want to thank the 4 panelists today for joining me. You're all good friends of mine, and I greatly appreciate the support today and excellent comments across the board. So I guess Peter, shall I turn it back to you?
Yes, please. Thank you all. If the audience has enjoyed the session half as much as I have, then really well done. Absolutely superb. I felt the flow was excellent. I've got a raft of questions that I've been making notes on down the side, and it's really good that we haven't actually had to use them, if that makes sense. It's a great industry, and sort of I think people do forget that you're really at the closest end to the customer than anyone. And there's all sorts of issues, but you all gave your time. Thank you. And it's been a tough year for everybody. This time last year, we were still contemplating whether or not lockdowns would ever happen. I remember we postponed an event by this time last year, and people said to me, but why are you really postponing it? Geneva Motor Show is still happening. And I'm saying, but it won't. It's impossible. So, but I think there's been a lot of resilience. I think people have changed approach. We've had to look at what we're doing differently. When you guys talk about the charging systems and whatever, what we don't want to happen is the old sort of Betamax VHS sort of cassette. I'm really showing my age now, but sort of that syndrome happening. But thank you all. Keep safe. Hopefully you will have enjoyed it as much enough to come back as well. So thank you. And thanks again, Dennis, for doing it all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Be safe.
Bye. Hi, it's Peter again, and thank you for watching the session. Connect EV community. Send messages to each other and start to build relationships for the future. Also, take a look at our supplier showrooms. Our partners have got lots of products and services that they have to offer, which again could be of benefit to you. Make the most of the opportunity, and thank you again for joining us.